Hey, it's Izzy, and what's been busy? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to draw eyes, or how I like to draw my eyes. This is going to be a full in-depth tutorial showing you how to draw a realistic eye, how I stylize eyes, how to handle different eye shapes and angles, and lastly, how I color my eyes. So if you want to learn all my tips, Teacher Izzy or Miss Izzy will be right here sharing all my secrets and holding your hand every step of the way. Alrighty, let's get into the video. Now before we start actually drawing the eyes, I want to show you the skull. So the skull is very important because it is really going to help you in the long run in terms of really understanding what is up under the skin. The big thing that I want you to focus on is right here. The eyes are always going to be pushed back a little more because even if you look at the nose is sticking out more than even the eyes. So you want to take that into consideration as you are drawing, to always push back the eye a little bit more. And then you can see that as we even have this eye over here, you can see a little bit of the cheekbone, and the cheekbone would be going down normally to right here. Anatomy is so important, and you're going to want to understand these features and why things are set up the way they are, and the best way to study that is to look at multiple different skulls and see multiple different angles as well. Another thing that I really want to point out to you all is to make sure that whenever you're drawing the face, you're always making a curved line when you are drawing faces, because we all have features that wrap around our faces. A straight line makes everything really stiff, and so the curved line indicates that it is 3D and it is wrapping around. So for this example, I really want to draw a realistic eye in order to stylize. I highly recommend first learn the rules, then go off and find your own unique style. You can check out my Pinterest in order to get all the references from this video, but we're first going to start off with this beautiful eye. So the first thing that I like to do is look at the shape of the eye, and every eye kind of follows this trapezoid shape. But this is a great way to get started and to visualize and break down the shapes. Breaking down shapes is going to be really important as you're drawing, and so you want to have a go-to shape, so to speak, in order to break down the eye as best as you possibly can. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw that shape. Okay, now after you have drawn your trapezoid, another key detail is to look at this eye and notice how even though we drew this boxy trapezoid, no one's eyes really look like this, because if you look at the top, it is actually curved. It has a curve roundness right here that you really want to focus on and take into account. I'm going to want to round out the edges. I'm going to make a new layer on top of my trapezoid, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to draw over this trapezoid shape in order to mimic the curve of the eye. Now after the curve, I like to focus next on the tear duct, which, if you can see, the tear duct is kind of a very small triangular shape. The tear duct kind of goes down and slopes down, and then it comes back in, but it kind of has this curved shape to it. It's not just a simple triangle. If anything, you want to make sure that you're going down and then coming back up and having more of a curved shape. I'm just going to take my eye, go in, and then now at this point you want to curve it in, but then you want to curve it back out like so, and you just connect it with the rest. I'm going to go in and just add a little bit more depth to the eye. So now I'm going to draw the iris, and I'm simply just going to start from the top and create that round part. As you can see, it's not a full circle. You don't really see a full circle in the eye. You usually see part of it, and part of it is cut off as well. So remember to keep that in mind, that you generally wouldn't have a full circle but more so a cut off circle. What I typically do is just start off and making a round shape inside of the eye and just curving it around. If you have trouble drawing the iris, I highly recommend just drawing a simple circle over your eye and then erasing the top part. If you need some type of rule to help you get started, that would be a great one because it gives you just that idea of where the eye should be placed and how much of the iris should be really shown. I'm going to add the line for the tear duct. I just want to add the simple line. If we take a look at the reference photo, we can clearly see the waterline right here. Typically, it starts kind of near the tear duct, and you're simply going to just follow the shape down here that we've already made. And if you look right here, there's actually a shadow because once again, everything is round right here. So in order to make this look like it's actually going in this way, you'd have to make sure that you have this shadow right there. Simply follow what has already been drawn. I would just curve it simply like this to show that it is going in the back. When you see the waterline, it is actually very thin in the beginning and then it starts to get a lot thicker as you keep going on, so keep that in mind. Okay, so now I want to talk more about the top part of the eye. I know eyelashes are a pretty big thing that people can tend to struggle with because a lot of times people just see this. They just see straight lines sticking up from the eye, but that is actually incorrect. So if I take a look at this eye, you can see how the eyelashes are never just sticking straight up out of her eye, but if anything, the eyelashes are angled a certain way and follow a certain form depending firstly on how long the person's eyelashes are, how curled they are, and etc. If you take a look over here, you can see how the eyelashes start at this point, they curl down, and then they curl up. So notice the difference in the shapes compared to just having a line stick up. This curved line is more dynamic. If we step back and see the full picture here, every single time you're seeing an eyelash, you're actually seeing a curved line. So even over here, even though they may be more jumbled, it's starting down here, it's curving down, and then it curves up like this. So whenever you're drawing your eyelashes, you want it to generally follow this shape. Another thing to keep in mind is the eyelashes don't just stay in one direction. For example, if I was to start drawing right here, they actually start to be curved less, and it gives it this, once again, round feeling, trying to make the eye feel round. For example, with this middle part, a lot of times you would just simply keep it very light and loose, and then you'll see how the eyelashes are curving in this direction and generally following this shape. So as you can see, this is a completely different shape, and the eyelashes can go in all different sorts of directions. Sometimes you'll see eyelashes sticking down, and that goes for the bottom lashes as well. If you take a look, they're also following this curved shape where they're curving down, and you can see that. And you can also see a lot of eyelashes kind of hitting one another, like right here, kind of curl on top of one another and make a lot of these crisscrossy shapes. When you are stylizing the eyes, typically you don't see a lot of artists do this just because it makes it more complex. But as we are drawing this specific eye, you would want to kind of make the eyelashes go in different directions. One more point that I want to make is when I'm making my eyelashes, I never just have eyelashes that are like this. You have to make sure to have also some eyelashes a little bit thinner, and then some that are thicker. Starts out thick and then it starts to thin out a little bit. Now before I actually start drawing the lashes, I actually want to tweak my eye a little bit because I think some things are a little off, for example, the waterline and the top of the eye, as well as the tear duct. So make sure you're always looking at your reference to just make some tweakments. I'll get back to you when we start doing the eyelashes. Even though you're following your guidelines, you want to make sure you're always following what is actually in the reference photo. Okay, so we are going to continue doing the eyelashes. I like to color in the top part. Now, even though you may not be drawing every single lash, drawing in that black line really helps fill in any gaps. So I'm going to draw this line on top just to help with the lashes and add a little bit more depth. I like to make the top a little bit darker and make it lighter as we're coming down. So now as we move into the middle, usually transitioning the lashes can be a very tricky thing at times, but if you follow the top of the eye, you'll be able to gauge how to draw the lashes when you're on the left side. This is the direction. When you're in the middle, it's not exactly straight, but it will follow a slightly less curved line, and then as you come to your right, it will be curved this way. So that is the direction of the lashes, and even in the middle, you'll see things kind of look like this, and that's how it transitions. It starts off pointing towards the left, then in the middle, they're kind of pointing towards each other, and as we come to our right, they are curved to the right. So I can say, as I've been drawing lashes, I never actually start at the top of the eye and draw the lashes like this, but if anything, I'm starting all the way down from the bottom and curving them up. Once again, make sure you have some variety in your lines. Don't just draw the exact same lines. As you can see, some are a little bit longer, some are shorter, some are thinner, and some are thicker. Because if every single lash is the exact same size, exact same height, then it's just going to be really bulky. So you want to have a softer hand as you are drawing these lashes. So you're going to keep them generally small, and you're going to go like this, and keeping them still in that same direction that I talked about, but just making them very small so they're able to transition well. And then as you see, as we keep going, they actually get further down into the eye. Like even if you look at this lash, I mean, it looks like it's hitting the tear dot. It is completely normal if your lashes are hitting in all these weird different places, because this is a close-up reference. Now, if you've made it this far, congratulations, because now we are almost done with the eye actually. Now, eyelids can vary a lot, so I like to look at the eyelids and see, okay, how much space is in between from the actual eye and how much skin is actually showing. So from this particular reference photo, there's actually not a lot. You would just simply keep that same line following the top of the eye and only leaving really a little bit of space. So technically you're just following that top line you made, but since it's folding, I like to have mine a little bit more angled. Now for the bottom part of the eye, there is a pretty big fold at the bottom. Now you do want to do this very carefully, because if you add too many folds or if you make it too prominent, it can make the eye look more bugged out, or it can make the person look really old or tired. So you want to make a very simple fine line. For me, I don't even connect it all the way. I'll just follow that same shape going here, but then I'll stop in the middle and I'll add another line curving down. Now onto the pupil. If we look at the pupil is not directly in the middle of the circle that we made. It technically is a little bit closer to the top of the eye than actually the bottom of the eye. You see how much space is actually between the bottom part of the iris? I'm going to set mine right here because it is quite close to the top of the eye. And lastly, we actually just have the eyebrow. You want to look at the eyebrows and not just see a bunch of hair, but start to see little clumps, so then you can immediately be able to replicate that without having to draw every single strand. The brain will fill in all the gaps. But going back to the direction of the eyebrows, if you look at the eyebrow, when you're first technically seeing the eyebrow, it starts off looking like this and going in this diagonal direction. Then it starts to straighten out a little bit and curve into this way, and then it goes down. As you can see, just even with the eyebrow, there are a lot of different directions that you want to take into consideration. So remember that, and to see how you can break that up, I could clearly see that it was going in this direction at first, and then it cuts off, and then it goes into that direction, and then it starts to go down. So see where the stopping points are. First going to start making it go into this direction. And you want them to kind of merge together. Make sure when you're actually drawing it that you're making some lines actually merging in to one, because we had lines going up this way and then we had lines going this way. But you see how wild the eyebrows can technically look because they're going in all these weird directions. Once again, you'll start to get the hang of it as you keep practicing, but really examine eyebrows and see all the different directions. And now a big thing that I like to do, which I highly recommend that you do as well, is to never just leave the eyebrows cut off with this blunt end. Make sure that you're always going back and adding some more faint lines to show that it's building up, because it is more faint in the front and then it starts to get more bold in the back. You can even go in and add some thicker lines just to emphasize certain points of the eyebrow. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is pretty much it. So I'm going to shade this for a little bit. I'm just going to take a normal airbrush and I'm just going to deepen some areas. And then over here, it will start to have more of a shadow right here when it's being curved. So that'd be a good place to add the shadow just to deepen it up a little bit. And of course, you would want to go at the bottom as well. This spot is always lighter, but down here, since there is a fold, you want to show a little bit of that. So you add the shadow right going into there. Very lightly though, not too dark. Although I've already drawn a realistic eye, I want to show you how I like to stylize my eyes. Now I have two versions. The first version is just a standard stylized eye that doesn't really follow the reference photo, but it's just something I like to do when I'm trying to stylize an eye. So as you can see, it is already starting off in a completely different way than the realistic eye. For example, I use a circle instead of using that trapezoid shape, and that's just because I like my stylized eyes to have more roundness to them. I think they're cuter when you have more round features. And also with this eye, I think it's quite obvious I make everything a lot bigger. Most artists tend to make the eyes a little bit bigger because it just really adds a lot to the face and it makes it cute. So even the iris is a little bit bigger, and you can even see I add this dark eyeliner or cat eye. Once again, it just really makes it pop out and adds a stylized touch to the eyelashes. And even in this eye, I don't even draw a full circle for my pupil. I kind of like to draw this little U shape as my pupil. I like my pupil to be really simple, but the thing about stylized eyes is you're supposed to take the main key features, which would be an iris, the white part of the eye, the pupil, and even some highlights, and then you exaggerate those features in order to make the eye your own. So if you want to follow this particular eye, you obviously can. It's a very simple eye in my opinion, and has less steps. I don't even draw a waterline or a tear duct either, because I realize I actually don't really like the tear duct when I am stylizing eyes. For a long time I used to have a lot of these realistic features, but as I have matured and grown as an artist, I decided to take some of those features out because I thought, simple is just better. When you're trying to draw something over and over again, it's better to have a simple form of it all instead of making it very complicated. And that is pretty much it for the first version of this eye without a reference photo. This is just my personal way of drawing a eye. Now with the second eye, I decided to try to follow the reference photo so you all can see a little bit of some of the differences. So I'm basically taking the realistic eye and my stylized eye and merging them together. And you can see the big thing that I like to do is first try to gauge the eye shape. I think if you have the eye shape pretty much down, it will follow the reference a little bit more. So in this case, I took a little bit of the roundness away and I made it more of an oval shape when I started off, but I still tried to keep some of those details. Like with the iris, I decided to still make it a bright circle, and I even tried to mimic the eyelid shape in this particular eye. So you can see some of the differences and how you can kind of merge both worlds together. Now this is typically what I'm trying to go for. I personally like to mix what I see in the reference photo, mix my personal style, and then you have a completed eye. I personally like the way it looks, and it makes the characters a little bit different instead of just having my standard stylized eye in every single drawing. And that is pretty much it for the second eye. Up to this point, I've really only drawn eyes that are more feminine based, so I want to show you how I would handle a stylized eye that is based off a man. In this particular reference photo, I didn't even follow it exactly because I wanted to make the eye a little bit bigger than the way it is shown in the reference photo. I liked my eyes to be a little bit bigger. You see, in this particular eye, it is a little bit different, but I would say the main thing that is different about this eye compared to the other ones is they're just not as big and they are more angled. So with that trapezoid shape I initially start off with, I like to kind of follow that and keep some of those angles. I curve it out just a little bit. I like how angled that trapezoid shape is because that's typically what you see with men. They have more angled and squared features, and with women they have more soft and round features. So those are honestly the biggest differences, and I don't like to add any lashes. I think the lashes make the men look a little weird and makes them look like they're wearing fake lashes. I just decided to completely take it out and not even really add any lashes, and it creates some differences between the feminine eye and the masculine eye. And that's how I like to draw eyes that are particularly based off of men. Here on the side we have a bunch of different eyes, and you really want to pay attention to the way these eyes look because they all look very different. As you keep practicing different types of eyes, you'll get a feel for how to draw multiple different shapes in your particular style. So as you look and see these different eyes, you can see some have more of a curved line going down. Some eyes are a little bit bigger, so you're pretty much going to be always looking at the top of the eye, the bottom of the eye, and how big the iris is. If I look at this eye specifically, you can see that this eye goes down a little bit more, and that's something you're going to want to take note of. Another thing to notice is because they are Asian, they don't really have the eyelids that we would typically draw. So you want to always look at these key differences and see how different all the eyes look from each other. I would say another thing to note is notice how the iris touches pretty much almost the bottom of the eye compared to some other eyes that we have seen. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line. And a big thing you want to note is pretty much every single time you see eyes, there's always another eye that could kind of fit in the middle. And this just really helps with proportions. So if you have the eyes too close together, it can make the proportions a little weird and wonky. So just make sure you have basically another eye that is able to fit in the middle of their face. Whether you're doing a stylized eye or a realistic eye, you always want to keep that rule in mind. So you can see right here, I could technically fit in 3 oval shapes. So I draw my top line, and then I draw my line going down this way. Now as you can see, the tear duct is more about a point. I would say make sure that the tear duct is pointing. I'm also going to make this coming down a little bit more. And then we have the iris right here. Even in my own style, to show that they are Asian, I will tweak the eyes a little bit, because typically I like to draw these big eyes. And I'm going to just add a little bit of a highlight right there. Beautiful. And now we can draw the other eye. I'm going to start drawing the eyebrows and just drawing the general shape of them. In this case, they're pretty thick, so just going to keep it pretty simple. And you want to see where the eyebrows start, so most of the time they'll start right here by the tear duct. Sometimes they can go over, but a lot of times the eyebrows will start right here by the tear duct. So make sure you leave enough room. So I would make the eyebrow going right here and continue that. You want to make sure there's enough space as well from the top of the eye to now meeting up with the eyebrow. So you don't want it to be too low unless that's what you're going for and that's what the reference photo is showing. But in this case, the eyebrows are a little bit further away from the eye. The eyebrows will end right here, pretty much right by this wing that you typically see on the eye, and it will end right here. Now that is it for these eyes. Now I'm going to move on to our next batch. So these eyes are actually quite different from the ones we just drew. So these actually are a lot bigger, and you can even see based just off the iris that it actually doesn't even touch the bottom part of the eye. So I would say to make these eyes bigger and to keep in mind the space in between the iris and the bottom part of the eye. Another guideline sometimes I like to use is just using a simple triangle to place the eyes in a specific spot. So you can make your triangle and then you can draw your ovals as well. That is just another option. Now I want you to take a look at even the reference photo because it is showing a lot of curves. So as you can see with her eye, it is curving more in this way. So you wouldn't want to just draw the straight line, but you're going to want to make these curves as you are drawing the eye, because that is what the reference photo is showing, and that's what makes these eyes a little bit more different. Now we're going to be moving on to this set. I would say that these eyes are not curved as much. Even if we look at this one, there is a slight curve right here, but pretty much stays consistent all around. And even same with here, just a very simple curved line going this way. Now, of course, since it is in a different direction, you tend to see more of the waterline and the white part of the eye curving out like this. Once it's turning in this direction, make sure to always show this curved line. This shape is very simple. It's also turned down more this way. So with this eye, I'm going to make it a lot slimmer, and you can see that there actually is quite a bit of space in between the iris and the bottom part of the eye. So I would make the iris a little bit smaller as well. Draw our two oval shapes. And since it's kind of going in this direction, I'm going to make the oval kind of face this way instead of just drawing the oval facing in the front. And then you can always use the nose as well as a bit of a guide to help you. So I can even draw the lines of the nose right here, the bridge, which can be really nice, especially if you're drawing very complex angles of the eye. The nose can be a great guide to help you give an idea of where the eyes are supposed to meet up at. We have our last and final set. Men can technically have bigger eyes, but generally speaking, as I am drawing, they're usually quite small and thinner. So if we take a look at the top part of the eye, you can see it curves down and then it meets in this way, and you can see it's just a very small size in comparison to all the other eyes. This set, you're going to want to make the eyes quite small, and the iris is also a little bit smaller. I would use the nose as another way to gauge where you want to place the other eye, and you can also even use the eyebrows. The eyes are a little bit slanted and they're actually not 100% just straight, but if anything, they are a little bit more slanted. Drawing eyes in all these different angles and having different shapes can be quite challenging, especially if you just started, and a lot of times the eye will look different in different angles. I'm going to show you all how to break down the shapes, and even if you have never drawn these particular eyes before, what to look out for and how you can start to gauge things. With this eye in particular, the main focal point is that you see that this whole section is all curved lines. Instead of just making your typical trapezoid shape, that is not going to really work in this case. I would break down the eye into this shape. Now I know that is very, very different than the shape that I originally taught you, but ultimately this shape is what's going to help you understand how to draw this particular eye. And then we talked about this last time, but you want to look at the nose bridge. If there is a nose bridge, you can use that to help gauge some things, and you can even look at the eyebrow, and you can see that the eyebrow isn't really showing because of this angle. You can see quite a bit of the skin showing, and you can even see how the lashes are quite different because they are pointing in this direction. You can even see that the iris is actually all the way in the corner. You don't even actually see the tear duct. The tear duct is completely missing from this angle. So let's first draw this shape. It's round over here and then it meets up. Kind of looks a little bit like an almond. So then I'm going to make this little fold right here. I don't know if you all can see this, but there is a little fold right here to show the top part of the eye. So I'm going to add that little fold right there. And I'm also going to draw a little bit of the nose to cut it off right here. And then same thing like we did the top, I'm going to round these all out to meet. I'm going to want to keep everything pretty much round. This part is more prominent than the last time we've ever drawn underneath the eye just because of the angle. So you're going to want to make these come out a little bit more. And then we're going to draw our iris. You can see there's quite a bit of space. And there's no need to even add the tear duct because it pretty much doesn't exist in this particular reference photo. We're going to even make the eyelid also more prominent, and you're going to make the eyelid curve around this part. You see, you're going to have to break down the shapes and notice how things are curving around the eye. I'm always breaking down the shapes, and instead of just looking at it as an eyelid or an iris, that if you break it down into simple shape, you'll be able to process the information a little bit better. And then we can draw the eyebrow, and notice how the eyebrow starts right here. So I'm going to make my eyebrow start here as well. And since it's going kind of in a little bit where you can't even really see it, once again I'm going to break it down. I see a triangular shape. I think the best artists are the people who are just not only able to draw, but who are able to break down the shapes. Because of this particular eye, I'm actually going to draw the side of the face. I'm going to draw this part right here that we see meeting up with the eyebrow. We can have the eyebrow wrapping around over here. Notice how this part is actually not exactly over here, but a little bit further back, because remember when I showed you the skeleton, the eye is pushed back a little bit more. And then same thing over here. Just drawing a little bit of a line down, and then you can finish off by drawing the lashes. And we're going to use this top line and follow this shape going out, so there's actually some lashes even over here. Since the curved line goes all the way to the back, you're going to want to add lashes back here as well. Now this isn't actually curving up all the way up here, but if anything, it is actually curving just in this simple direction. And it can seem really flat, but it actually still brings out the eyes. So I'm going to do that where I'm not bringing it all the way up, but I'm just going to make simple curved lines and not curl them as much. So let's move on to the next angle. This is now the next eye that we're going to draw. I'm going to break down the shapes for you all. What I see is a triangle shape facing in this way. I'm not even going to try to use the trapezoid shape in this case because we are actually missing the whole other part of this eye. Then the focal point on this eye is the iris popping out right there. I would take note of also the eyelid right here. The eyelid is actually sloping up more and then thicker right here. So you're once again seeing this whole other section shaded away and not really seen. So we're going to first draw our triangle, and then it's sloping down. I'm going to make it meet up. Then I'm going to make the eyelid pop out this way, very thick over here. So the eyelid's going to be quite wide this time around. The eyelashes are going in this direction, but for the iris is taking up quite a bit of space. If you look over here, you pretty much only see this spot. I'm gonna curve the iris out like this to show that it's poking out. I want to show you guys also this part. This part is once again going to be very important to show depth. Going to want to always look out for these shadow bits because they're going to help you to gauge things. I'm going to take out this part and just mimic the shape that I see right there. I like to shade this part. I'm also going to bring the eyelid over here, and then making this line really come down. But back to the iris, I'm going to have this entire part curved up. And since the eye is pointing in this way, I want to show that. So you're not going to want to make the iris too big on this side, but you're going to want to bring it in a little bit more. I'm going to also add some more shadows to show the folds. And now I think it is time to start adding the lashes. So I'm going to start right here. You can see quite a bit of them actually, and how long they are. So once again, we're still following that shape that I've been pretty much talking about this entire time. It's been pretty consistent. And then notice how I'm going to make more curved lines to make it coming out like this. And I'm going to change my angle a little bit and go in this direction. But you're not really seeing the eyelashes come all the way up to the eyelids, but you're just seeing them curved and they're kind of just right here. Same thing for the bottom. You're not actually just seeing them simply come out this way, but they're more so coming out, they're being curved, and then they're ending like this. This is the final result of this eye, and now we're going to move on to some other examples. I am still doing the basic trapezoid shape. Now because the eye is pushed back a little bit more and their head is tilted down, what's going to give this illusion is basically the eyebrow. I feel like the eyebrow is doing all the work in this particular angle, because if the eyebrow was sitting up a little bit more, it would just look like the typical front view we see. But the eyebrow is pushed down, which makes the eyes look like they're pushed back a little bit more. And also the eyelids are down a little bit more as well. You don't even see the middle part of to show that it is actually pushed down and is being folded. I noticed that the lashes aren't curved as much. You're not seeing the same amount of length that you normally would see with the lashes. They are still curved, and you can even see that the lashes are hitting up against the eyebrow. For the last and final angle, I'm showing you how to draw the profile eye. What really makes this eye stand out, you're seeing more so of the nose, and the eyebrow is pushed a little more forward than the eye itself. I think with this particular eye, you want to really show, for example, the nose and the brow to really indicate that it's a profile view. Just make sure that you're not putting the eye too close to the nose. You want to make sure that there's a little bit of space, which I did draw a little diagram earlier showing you how much space is between the bridge of the nose and the actual eye. Moving on to the next part of this tutorial, which you should be very happy if you've made it this far, because now we're going to get into coloring. I really enjoy coloring the eyes, of course, because now the eyes get to actually pop. We're going to take the previous eye that I drawn before, where I stylized this eye in my style, and I'm going to take this eye and show you how I personally like to color eyes. Let's begin. First things first, I never use black line art. I personally think it's a little harsh, so in order to tone that down a little bit, I'm going to go up under this specific eye. I'm going to put Alpha Lock and I'm going to color it bright red. I can even tone down the red a little bit. And that just looks so much better. Now I'm gonna go up under that layer and put something to go up under it. I personally like to pick out my own skin tones. I actually never color pick from the references. Usually with the references, it tends to look really washed out. So I'm going to pick a color. I want it to look pretty bright as well. I like to go for more saturated colors. That's kind of my thing. So I like everything to look nice and bright, and if you're picking it from the reference, most of the time it can come out really dull even with the most saturated picture. If you don't like the color, you want to just tweak it a little bit, you can actually go over to this magic wand, click on hue, saturation, and brightness, and now you can easily adjust the saturation, the brightness, but I'm pretty happy with mine, so I'm not gonna do that. I always usually go in and shade before I add the highlight. I notice right here the parts are really dark. I notice up under the eye and the folds right here by the eyelid. What I like to do is just add a new layer, click on multiply, just use the exact same color, and then you get a darker version of it. Simple and quick. And then if you make a mistake, you can easily erase, but you're not erasing the skin tone underneath. Now this is very orangey and I am aware of that, but I don't mind it. I want this to be nice and saturated. I'm also going to add a little bit of shading right here. You can change the opacity on the side. I like to change the opacity sometimes if the brush is a little too harsh. And I don't like to soften up the whole thing, just around the edges. Next step is to add some highlights. Picking this really peachy tone because this is looking really orange, so I'm going to go in with this peach color. Typically I can pick another effect, which sometimes I use a lighter color in order to add my highlights. I'm just going to go in and add this where the highlights are at. Add a little bit right here in the corner, and then even some over here. It's a bigger brush. As you can see, every time I place some type of color down, I don't always necessarily airbrush every single bit out. I think sometimes it's nice to have some really blocking out a specific amount of color, and other times I think it's very useful to soften up some of those edges. You don't have to use the airbrush for everything, but you can just gently add a little bit of color and just leave it the way it is. It still feels kind of a bit flat. I really want to add a little bit more color, so usually I'll add a bit of pink or redness to the face. I do this because there's just natural blood in our skin and it really makes a huge difference. If you're wondering how exactly do I keep up to date with all these different effects, sometimes I don't necessarily know which one I want because they can all look so different. So I'll test it a little bit. I could just stay on the normal setting, but I actually really like the way color looks. So it's not necessarily always a very strategic way of doing it. If it's too pink, you can always go down, look at the opacity, and decide how much of it you want to show. I think that looks really, really pretty. I'm going to take a little bit of a step back from the skin, but I want to start coloring in the eye itself. So I'm going to add a new layer. Now in the past, I used to use gray to shade in the white parts of the eye, but now I'm actually really into blue. I think blue really brightens up the eye. I think it looks so pretty. Also going to now paint the iris, so I'm going to add a new layer. I know all these layers, but I just like to keep everything separate. Some people like to add more on top of just one layer, but I notice I tend to make last minute changes and I like to personally keep everything separate. I'm going to pick a pretty mint color because I'm seeing a lot of blues. I think this mint color will go really, really nicely on the eye. Brighten it up a little bit. Since the sketch is actually in red, sometimes I will will go in and change the sketch a little bit, have it on alpha lock, and I'll just color in the parts that I want to change. So that's what I basically do whenever I want a specific color to match something else. I'll just go in with another color that is a little bit darker. But back to the white part of the eye, I'm going to go back to that specific layer and I'm going to add some highlights. So generally highlights are right in the middle part of the eye because most of the time you're seeing this harsh shadow. Typically I like to keep the highlights right here. That'll make it a little bit brighter. Like add, for example, always makes everything super bright, which I love using. And since add is really bright, you're going to want to tone down the color just a bit because it's so bright. You see how bright she is? Very beautiful. The next step I like to take is I like to go over the entire eye and add a really harsh shadow, even if the reference photo isn't showing a really harsh shadow. I just like to do it because it's a good rule of thumb, and typically that's what you see with most of the eyes. So I'm going to add another layer and I'm going to click on multiply. Sometimes when you are using the reference is more so meant to be a guide rather than an actual rule book to follow. So you can always tweak anything in the reference photo. And you see I am changing it up quite a bit. I think that's enough with the white parts of the eye. I'm going to go right back to the iris and I want to add a little bit of detail. So I'm going to go in with my sketch layer and I'm going to make some parts a little darker. So you can see there's actually quite a bit of colors. We can see some lighter greens, we can see lighter blues and some darker blues. There's quite a bit of blues we can work with. I want to add that into the piece. I'm first going to start off by adding some of those greens and yellows into the piece. And I want to pick a bright lime green color. Basically I'm going to add little splotches. You're splotching on just a little bit of color. I'm even going to shade a little bit over here on the side. Usually go in and add a bright orange to the shadow areas just to enhance the color. For these next clips, I decided to show you all my real-time process. So if you like the real-time process part of this video, let me know down below in the comments, do you prefer the time-lapse version or do you prefer the real-time process? I think at the end of the day, you can pretty much always try to over-explain exactly what you're doing, but I honestly believe that it's better for you all to see for yourselves exactly what I like to do, because a lot of these things aren't necessarily based off of an explanation. Some of these things I just personally like to do, and that's what I felt inclined to do in that moment. Now I'm gonna allow you all to enjoy the rest of the video, but I hope that this art class with Izzy was very informative and useful to you. If you would like to see more in-depth tutorials like this, comment down below some ideas so I'll be able to give you all the best tutorials I possibly can. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. bye.